What's up, everybody? My name is Joe Brown. This is Heresy Financial, and today we are going to be looking at this chart. This is the M1 money supply. We can see a massive spike, basically overnight, over $10 trillion added to the M1 money supply. Massive, unprecedented spike. So today we are going to explain exactly what that was because it is not as it seems. Ready? Let's dive in. Alright guys, so I know that this video is probably long overdue since this change happened over a year and a half ago, but I still see this M1 chart pop up from time to time, people using it to say, hey, look at all this money printing that happened. The money supply spiked by $10 trillion in one night. And especially when you zoom out and you look since, 1975 here, that's a massive spike. It's just crazy. Now, the thing that is odd about this, which we'll get into the explanation what's going on here. The thing that's odd is this is M2, and you don't have the same spike in M2 happening. Now, if you're not aware, M2 and M1 are both different ways to measure the money supply, but M1 is part of M2. So M2 is a broader measure of the money supply than M1 is. M1 measures certain things. M2 measures everything that is included in M1 plus a little more. So you would imagine, you would think that if M1, if something happened where there was a lot of money created out of thin air and it caused the measure M1 to spike $10 trillion overnight, that you would see a similar spike in M2. But over that same period of time, you only saw M2 spike what is that, 2 trillion? So you didn't see the same spike in M2 that you saw in M1. So here's what happened. It's very, very simple. Savings accounts were added to M1. So prior to this date, all through history, the measure called M1 calculated a number of things as money, and it did not include savings accounts. For whatever reason, M1 was more of a strict measure of what money was. And so since savings accounts were considered, hey, people aren't going to be touching savings, this is kind of money that's out of circulation, M1 did not calculate savings accounts in the total supply of money there. But M2 did. So this whole entire time, M2 was always calculating savings accounts inside of M2. And so you would, if you were taking a look at the differences, that was one of the differences. M1, savings accounts were not included. M2, savings accounts were included. M2 always calculated everything that was in M1 plus some other things, and that used to be savings accounts. Well, on this date, when this change took place, they just made a change, an accounting change, and they said M1, we're now going to count savings accounts as part of M1 money supply. So that's a big change, right? All of the cash, all the dollars that were in savings accounts were suddenly under M1. But guess what? M1 and savings accounts were already part of M2. And so the broader measure, which was M2, already took into account everything that was in M1 and already took into account savings accounts. And so the fact that savings accounts were added to M1 was simply a measurement change. There was no change to the money supply from that accounting or that calculation, that measurement change. It was everything that was in M1 plus savings was already in M2. Savings just got added to M1, so there was no change to M2 because savings were already calculated as part of M2. If you need an analogy, think of a refrigerator, right? There's lots of different refrigerators with different sizes of refrigerators and different sizes of freezers. So you can go and you can buy a refrigerator that has a lot more fridge space and a lot less freezer space, or you can buy one that has a lot more freezer space and a lot more fridge space. Overall, they're going to have the same amount of volume, but with them combined, the fridge plus the freezer. But depending on how that's divided up, your fridge or your freezer space individually might be larger or smaller. That's all that's going on here. M2 was the total of fridge space and freezer space put together. M1 was just fridge space before, and now it counts fridge and freezer space together. So it more closely aligns with M2. Now M2 still calculates a couple other things other than just what's in M1. The thing though that most people don't pay attention to when they're looking at this changes, that was a big change that caught everybody by surprise, and confused a lot of people for a while. This is what I don't like. They changed M2. If you can see here, it used to be updated weekly. Now it's only updated monthly. So if you see here, the most recent data point here, November 1st. If you know today's date, as of today's recording, it is December 8th. So we have a huge lag time now between when these data points are updated, even though you can still see it's a weekly data series still, right? So you can see here, every one of these data points is a week, but they don't give you the next data points until over a month has passed. Then they give you each of the week's data points from the past month. And so the total money supply calculation here is just, it's very old and stale now, where we used to get it updated every single week. So that's a change that I do not like, and that's a change that unfortunately nobody can do anything about because they own the data. But that was the real change that I think was worth mentioning instead of this accounting change, because it's just an accounting change. There was no difference to the money supply here. Nothing shady going on there. So that's it. Hope that explains things. If you were ever confused or curious about why there was such a large spike in M1, that's why. Let me know if you have questions in the comment section below. Thanks so much for watching. Have a great day.